Here is part 3 of the 2017 PFA season recap. In the last episode, I talked about the National Central, and this time I'm going to talk about the National South, consisting of the Birmingham Hornets, the Jacksonville Bucks, the San Antonio Longhorns, the Atlanta Trojans, and the Tampa Tropics, all in reverse order. So let's get this underway. So we start off the video talking about the last place team, the Tampa Tropics. Last year, of course, they were 3-15. They were one of the worst teams in the PFA. And this year they had a pretty solid turnaround, I must say. I mean, they went 6-12, so they doubled their wins. But, of course, it's still a losing record, and they're still dead last in their division. But much better compared to where they were last year. All those stats, other than their 12th best rushing offense, they're pretty bad in every other category. But this team does have some more studs than they did last year. I mean, God, for quarterback, because they could not get a quarterback in the draft, they went for the free agency instead. They brought in, of course, remember, Robert Richardson, who was the backup quarterback for the Atlanta Trojans last year. He played okay, but he had injuries too, so he was kind of ineffective in that way too. Meanwhile, Stuart Collin, one of their backups, actually played really well with them. In fact, this season is 4 starts and 7 games. He threw 8 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. He was pretty damn good. And of course, their biggest haul was their wide receiver, Edward Govin, who was the 3rd overall pick in the draft, was an absolute stud throughout the season. If y'all remember during the highlights when I talked about him numerous times when Tampa played. So Tampa is a team that's on the rise. They just need to fill up a whole bunch of holes and get a lot better in terms of the stats. They need to score more and they need to allow less points and such. But honestly, they might be just fucked because they're just in a bad division that's just too good. I mean, think of it. They're in a division with the Birmingham Hornets, the number 1 defense in the league, and they're a contender for the title. The San Antonio Longhorns, strong offense. The Jacksonville Bucks, strong offense. The Atlanta Trojans, they are around 500, but they have a strong offense. So think about that. 3 teams in their conference made the playoffs, and the other one was just 1 win away from having a 500 record. The competition in that division is so intense and so hard that, unfortunately for Tampa, unless a couple of those teams fall off in the coming years, they might be just stuck last place in that division for any time soon. Although, who knows? I mean, I thought Manhattan was going to probably struggle the entire year. They ended up winning the title game. Louisville, last year's worst place team in their conference, they went 9-9. So, hey, maybe Tampa can have a little bit of a bright future and catch up with the rest of the division. But it's going to be a lot of work, to catch up to them, and a lot of work still to rebuild this team. But still, a pretty good season at least, and a free game improvement. That's always something to happy to think about going into 2018. And also consider this. They have Edward Govin, a rookie wide receiver who was a stud. They got Edward Robinson, their running back, a stud, and is going to be kicking ass throughout the season. And if their quarterback, Stuart Collin, who I think is definitely going to be the starting quarterback in 2018, if he could play good, oh man, that's a triple crown threat offense they're going to have with their team. That can really help them compete in both the National South and in the National Conference. Next up is the Atlanta Trojans. And oh boy, last year, of course, remember that they were the worst team in the league, but they ended up having that 6-0 start. Ended up finishing 9-9 with one of the best offenses, just a terrible defense. Well, year 2, pretty much the same. At first, they start off 2-1, and those 2 games where they won, their quarterback, Cody Perry, put up 12 touchdowns. They're like, holy shit, maybe Atlanta, this is time for them to finally rise up. But no, this team would have 2 different 4-game losing streaks, and they just could never recover. They had a whole bunch of winning streaks too, but it just really wasn't a good season for him. They ended up finishing 8-10, and they by and large were pretty much exactly the same where they were last year. And here is a very damning stat for you. Just like last year, this team was the 2nd best offense in the league. They had the 5th most yards, the 4th most passing yards, and the 11th best rushing offense. So, in all these categories, 3 of them, all 4 of them, they're very good, and for 3 of them, they're elite, and the other one, they're second to best. But look at their defense, though. the third to worst defense in passing yards. The third to worst in yards allowed. The second worst run defense allowed. They allowed over 125 yards a game on average. Their passing defense was 32nd, which is bad. This team is basically a reverse of the Louisville Saints, you remember in the last video, where they had an awesome defense, but the worst offense literally in the league. Meanwhile, Atlanta has one of the best offenses, but literally one of the worst defenses. The team has not changed from last year by and large, and they're starting to fall apart since they've now regressed and had their first ever losing season. Now, of course, there are some good things about the team. Cody Perry, although he missed 2 games due to injury, so he still has yet to have a season where he didn't play all 18 games, he had his best season. Put up almost 4,000 yards again, 38 touchdowns to just 9 interceptions. He was on fire during the season, but his completion percentage is still really bad, so he's got to fix that too. They still have an elite running back in Kenneth Dixon. Joseph Eames, their wide receiver, literally had 2,200 yards in a season, over 22 touchdowns. He had almost like a Hall of Fame season by and large. He was elite. And this team did have 6 close games where if it went differently, they could have maybe been in the playoffs possibly, or at least in contention possibly. But another thing that hurts them though is they were 1-7 in their division. Just one division win against Tampa. They got swept by Birmingham. They got swept by Jacksonville. Swept by San Antonio. Hell, they lost a game to Tampa, a team that only won 6 games. If you want to have any serious contention of being in the playoffs in this division, you have to win a bunch of playoff games. You gotta win a bunch of games in your division. That was really bad. So, for Atlanta, I really don't know what to say. Birmingham and San Antonio look really good. Jacksonville, I think, is going to fall off when I get to them later on in the video. Tampa's on the rise. So, Atlanta's kind of like Jacksonville, just not successful. And if they don't do something soon, like fix that defense, I think they're going to waste that offense. I think they're going to eventually fall apart and they already are starting to fall apart as you see so far this year. So if they want to have any shot at making the playoffs, which they should, if we're being honest, they have to get better on defense or they're going to go nowhere and they're going to probably begin looking like the worst team in the division and starting to become the worst team in the division. So a disappointing season for Atlanta despite their incredible offense. What a wasted of talent. Next up is the National Conference runner-up, the San Antonio Longhorns. Last year, of course, they were one of the best teams in the league, but they've had a very disappointing year, being around 500 for most of the year, and ended up going 10-8 and just missing the playoffs. At first year, they had a streak where they would win a game and they would get spanked afterwards. And after that, they were 2-4. They lost 3 in a row and they're like, well, looks like it's going to be another one of those years where they just blow games again. They managed to then win 5 in a row. They lost one, a really close one. So now they're 5-5. They're like, okay, they're at least still hanging in there. They have a lot of work to go, though, to catch up with everyone in the conference. But they managed to do it. They managed to win out. Well, not win out. They won all but one of their final games in both very defensive struggles to outright offensive shootouts, including beating Birmingham in Birmingham, too. That was quite an impressive victory when they had to make a comeback. They went 12-6 and snuck in as the last seed in the playoffs. They then visited Denver, who they lost to in week 4 of the season, and they got their revenge and they beat them. And then they went down to Birmingham, and they did it again. They beat Birmingham, the number 1 defense, on the road once again in a defensive struggle. The next week, however, when they visited the Manhattan Greens, they just couldn't keep up with Manhattan offensively, and their defense just kept getting lit up. So they were 1 game short of making it to their first ever PFA title. So this was still a very successful season. And look at this. They had the 3rd best offense in the league. They are the number 1 offense in yards gained. They had the 3rd best passing offense, and something they did not really have last year, they had the 2nd best running game in the league, over 136 yards a game. This offense was balanced as fuck. And their defense, wow, they allowed 36 points, 36 most points allowed, which is really bad. That defense, though, other than that, was pretty average. Look at 19th, 19th, and 20th in every category. So they were solid and good. It's just that they kept allowing so many points. So San Antonio actually, I think, is on the up. I think they could really challenge Birmingham and possibly start becoming a considerable contender in the National Conference. They have the offense there, and Glenn Chen, their wide receiver, had an awesome MVP season, basically. Their running back, Elvis Smith, who had an okay season last year, turned it up and had one of the best seasons for the running back in the league, which makes you wonder what the hell are they going to do with their rookie running back David Baines that they took in the first round, as he didn't take a single snap. They're probably going to make him become the second back, and I think they're actually going to start considering doing backfield by committee for a bit. So they got a lot to work on that. But this team was very legit, and if they can just stop allowing so much points, they really can be a contender. Because they kind of played Manhattan light this year. Very strong offense, a solid defense, although Manhattan's defense was much better, but they just allowed way too many points, and if they can fix that, oh boy, they are going to be a threat for years to come in that conference. So a very strong season for San Antonio, making the playoffs, just falling short of the title game, and hoping 2018 will be a big year for them. Next up, the Jacksonville Bucks, and this team had a massive 180. Although technically they played basically the same as they did last year, but they went 13-5. In fact, remember, they started off 8-0. And if I'm correct, I think they were the last team, or one of the last teams, to stay undefeated. They went almost halfway through the season undefeated, and they went 13-5, their best record in franchise history, and they made the playoffs, almost getting home field advantage too if they didn't lose to Jacksonville the final week of the season. That's how close they were of being a home field advantage team. That would have been something if that switched around. That would be incredible. Maybe that could be a theory Monday to maybe talk about. But no, they were the 5th seed. They had to visit Oakland, who was the reversed opposite team of them, and literally a strong defense against a strong offense with a terrible offense and defense to complement them. And they just lost in a defensive struggle to Oakland. Nothing more you could do about it, especially when you're on the road and you're still a very one-side team. Now, this is a very successful season for them. Like I said, 13-5, which is the best record in franchise history. They tied the 2016 Baltimore Charm and the fellow 2017 wildcard team, the Oklahoma Oilers, for the best record for a wildcard team to have. But they have a lot of problems with them. First off, look at their stats. Yeah, they have the number 1 offense in the league. They were 7th in yards, and they were 3rd in passing offense, but they were 30th in defense. This team crapped the bed in terms of rushing yards. Last year, they were near the top of the second half. They were really good. They were a really balanced team, but no, they became strictly passing in this season, and that is not good. That's very one-sided. Second of all, their defense is still atrocious. It did not get better. At least with San Antonio, their defense in terms of yards got much better. It's just they allowed so many points still. There's no progression here whatsoever with Jacksonville. They basically played like Atlanta this year. And the more devastating fact, of their 18 games, 11 of them were within a score of each other. And get this, 9 of their 13 wins were within a score. 9. That's like over 70-something%. 9 of their games of their 13 wins were close. This reminds me exactly how it was last year for them, where they had so many close games, but they just blew. This time, however, they were able to win not only a couple of them, they won a vast majority of them, and that got them into the playoffs. And unlike San Antonio, where I think they're on the up, I think Jacksonville's actually in trouble. This can't keep up. You can't have a team that's this one-sided offensively, a very bad defense, and winning very close games. If you want to be taken seriously, you have to be blowing out opponents regularly. They did not do that. Only 4 of their wins were by over a score. And I don't think they're going to be as lucky next year. I don't. They got very lucky this year win all these games. I don't think they're going to even probably win half these games next year, and they're probably going to be back around 500 or even worse. And the only way they're going to prevent that from happening is they have to improve defensively, and they have to improve their running game. And it's not like they got no studs whatsoever on offense. They got David Stock, one of the best safeties in the game. So, for Jacksonville to succeed in 2018, get back into the playoffs, and maybe be considered a PFA Bowl contender, they got to improve that defense, and they got to fix their running game. If they don't, then I think they're going to eventually become more like Atlanta. And I think they, along with Atlanta, might eventually become the worser teams in that division as Tampa starts to rise up and Birmingham and San Antonio start competing against themselves for a PFA Bowl spot. A very good season still for Jacksonville. We can't underestimate that, but the trajectory is just not in their favor. They massively overachieved this year, just like last year they massively underachieved. And after going so low and then all of a sudden going so high, I think they're going to go back down again. I just can't see how it's going to be this good again next year unless they make those massive improvements. And last up, we talk about the Birmingham Hornets, the division winner. Last year, of course, remember they came in with that 7-game winning streak and one of the best defense in the league and make it to the division round of the playoffs, and we thought, holy shit, this team really can be a PFA Bowl 2 contender. And oh boy, they did not disappoint. Started off 4-0, continuing that winning streak from last year, and they ended up going 15-3. They had the best record in the league, and they ended up tying the 2016 Omaha Thunder for the best record ever in PFA history. And they did that, unlike last year with Omaha with the number 1 offense, they did it with the number 1 defense, and the number 1 defense in league history. Look at this. Number 1 in scoring defense, number 1 yards defense, number 1 in pass defense. Their 9th rush defense is pretty good, but nowhere near as elite as this. They allowed just 201 points. Just think about that. The last time in the NFL any team got close to 200 points or less was the 2006 Ravens, and they allowed 201 points. Birmingham did that with 2 extra games. Just think about that. That is incredible that they allowed that little points with 2 extra games to play. Offensively, they scored a whole bunch of points, although they did not get any yards, especially passing yards whatsoever. That was more because, of course, they had that running game, but a lot of it's because their defense forced so many turnovers that their offense was able to get a whole bunch of points. And that really helped. It had a 203-point differential. It's one of the best in the league. So, of course, they dominated the league. They destroyed every single offense. Of course, remember, they're in a division that is loaded with offensive talent. And they, by and large, dismantled and destroyed them. So, with all this settled, you'd think they're going to be a PFA Bowl champion, right? Nope. They hosted San Antonio, their division rival in the division round. A team that they actually lost to at home, which was the only loss they suffered at home this year. And they did it again, this time in a defensive struggle. Their offense just could not get anything going. Their defense played so hard and allowed them only 14 points, but their offense just could not get the points that they desperately needed. And the Birmingham Hornets went one and done in one of the most saddest and disappointing finishes in PFA history. Everything went right from they had everything in their position to go all the way to get their first title, and they blew it. So sad to see how they choked it so bad. So, what does Birmingham have to do to finally just make it to the title game and win it this time in 2018? They have an elite defense, and the defense got so much better. As long as they keep bringing back their stars, this defense could legit be a major force next year, too. It could even be better next year if you think about it, because this defense was so elite. They really could be a threat next year. They got to get better offensively, and they need to just get freaking lucky. All 3 of their losses in the regular season were close. And their loss against San Antonio in the playoff game, that was close too. That was only like 8 points, I believe it was. They need to not blow this opportunity again, because if this happens again, they might not be able to keep this up for long, because their offense is still bad. Well, not really bad, but it's not really that good. Even with a rookie quarterback, he needs to play better. That defense, of course, is not going to keep playing at a high level forever. They're going to get old. They're going to retire. They're going to have injuries. They want to go somewhere else with to offer more money and such like that. And, of course, salary cap problems. So Birmingham has to win in 2018 or this could start falling apart on them. And of course, they got to have now it's going to be probably a little bit easier next year because I think they might have to only deal with San Antonio by and large. I think Atlanta's going to be around the same or fall apart. I think Jacksonville's going to massively fall off. Tampa could be coming on the rise up, but they're still nowhere near ready to challenge anyone at division. So, Birmingham, you have an opportunity in front of you. You have to take it. The conference is by and large yours. The National South is yours. You have to take it and go run it all the way to Los Angeles next year for PFA Bowl 3. So, a very strong season, a historic defense, but no playoff win, let alone a title appearance, and that's really sad. Thank you for watching my recap of the 2017 PFA season in the National South. Next time, we'll finish out the National Conference by talking about the National West, which has the Oakland Majors, Phoenix Storm, Los Angeles Angels, the Portland Dragons, and the Hawaii Phantoms. See you guys next time. And this time it won't be as long because I've already updated 2 of the teams, and Los Angeles, Portland, and Hawaii are going to be next.